In this video, God's given me a message for the American church. I got quite a lot of flack in my last video. Mostly it had to do with the fact that I will not condemn homosexuals. I refuse to jump on that bandwagon. And even though that particular video was entirely about the church in Australia, those that brought the opposition were all Americans. I don't mind people having their say. They can bring their opinions to the table. And there was even some toing and froing, some conversation between us that in the end produced no fruit. And that's why I normally disregard these kind of comments. I don't usually engage them. I will usually leave their commenting up, even though it can and has in the past turned some people away from my channel. That doesn't bother me. People need to decide the truth for themselves. This is exactly why God has not stepped into all this mess that we see in the world, and I'll get to a little bit on why that is a little bit later in this video. I don't mind people being in contention with me, especially Americans. I have had enough to say about America, so that's fair. Now, let me just add here that my mother was American, and I have very close family ties that are still living there. So red, white, and blue legitimately runs through my veins. But I saw something happen last week over America, and I felt God say to me, do a message for the church in America and tell them about this. I wrote it up, but I didn't want to post it. I thought, I'm so sick of delivering this kind of stuff. But the thing is, if nobody else has seen what God has shown me, then I have to do it. If no one else is saying it, I have to do it. And God just kept giving me confirmations. One of those confirmations is a video that I came across nearly a week later. And I'm going to put a link to it. I hope it works. I'll talk a bit more about that too a little bit later. So last week I saw a global shift happen in the way the world looks at America. Now, this has nothing to do with whether you're conservative or liberal or Christian or not or anywhere in between. This is right across the board. So the rest of the world has had their eyes dragged on to focus on America ever since Donald Trump became president in an unprecedented way. We haven't even had a choice about this. And maybe American Christians need to see this through our eyes. Trump has dominated world news. There is barely a day's news that doesn't start with his face emblazoned on our TVs. Mostly because of his lies, gaslighting, triangulation, his grandiosity, his emotional immaturity, his tweets, and most certainly because of his lack of empathy and compassion. Now, this is not about what Americans think about Donald Trump, nor what American Christians think about him. This is about what the rest of the world thinks of America. Now, on August 3rd and 4th, there were 2 mass shootings in America, which as it stands left 31 dead. This makes the 250th and the 251st mass shootings in America for this year alone. These 2 deadly mass shootings were a catalyst that has caused a global shift in attitude towards America. Now, what happened this last week that shifted spiritually over America? Because of these last 2 mass shootings, and because you continually refuse to take any responsibility for your behavior, the rest of the world is officially over it. We are sick sick to death of shedding tears for you and having our compassion evoked when you are not prepared to do anything to help yourselves. Instead of taking any responsibility, you are, as a nation, demonizing groups so that you can have someone else to blame. That's what people do when they refuse to make the necessary changes in themselves. Australia experienced a dreadful mass shooting back in 1996, and our government immediately organised fundamental gun control changes and a gun buyback, which was incredibly successful. New Zealand recently had a mass shooting, and they are in the process of exactly the same things and already are seeing equally great success in a gun buyback process. But what does America do? Does it organise changes to the gun controls? Does it do a gun buyback? Does it do anything? Yes, it does. It finds groups that it can demonise and blame over this. Trump has said it is the fault of violent video gamers. And so what has Walmart do? Walmart, who was one of the places that saw one of the mass shootings in one of its stores, this last week has decided they're going to pull violent video game posters, but they are going to continue to sell guns. Now, this is not about the right to bear arms. This has nothing to do with the Second Amendment. This has everything to do with compassion. This is about doing the right thing. The rest of the world sees that you don't care. Your heart has gone cold and your compassion is no longer aroused. Now, this is exactly what I see happening when Christians want to come to tell me that I should jump on their bandwagon and condemn homosexuals, or any other group for that matter. Pick your enemy. This whole thing is so fear-based. It's a fear-based theology. It is people on the ground caught up in their fears and looking for someone else that they can blame. As though if you could gather all the homosexuals or whatever group, usually some imagined threat in their own mind, throw them all on a fire and destroy them, that all of a sudden all your problems are going to go away. Gather up all the illegal immigrants, throw them to hell, because we see that you have absolutely no regard for the outcomes of these families or of the children that are getting separated from these families. But, oh my God, castrate the homosexuals because they stand against God's idea of family, but don't do anything to save the children and the families that have been destroyed by mass shootings. Instead, let's find the group that we can blame. I watched Rick Joyner's latest rant. It was posted August 7th. It was titled Crisis Times 3. The reason why it caught my attention was because the last video that I did was entitled 3 Evils at Work in the Church in Australia. Now, mine was about the 3 evils that I saw operating in the church, but how interesting Rick Joyner's video was and how revealing. He was demonizing groups of people and blaming everyone else for what's happening in the US. He said he had settled in his heart that he was quite prepared to kill people if they attack him. He was talking about some unseen enemy that exists only in his own head. He said racism is evil and then launched into a 10-minute rant against China. But all of this is so fear-based. And of course, he never challenged the church to deal with its sin and its inaction, its lack of compassion and power to cause change. This is the stuff that makes up the foundational beliefs of cults, is that they are the chosen and the enemy is everyone out there. If they just get rid of everyone out there who's making us feel uncomfortable, then life will be stable and safe again. Now, when a society has reached that point, a whole society has reached that point and refuses to do anything to prevent it, refuses to do the changes that are necessary, and when the church won't speak up against it, because it may mean that half the church will have to give up their guns, then you know that there's no hope left for that society. The world has lost its patience with you, and now they sit back and watch America implode. The more you demonize, blame, and condemn other groups, the faster you are headed there yourself. Now, I'll post, this isn't just my thing, right? I'm going to post a link to a video down below, and I hope the link works. It only goes for 3 minutes, and you need to watch it through to the end to see the American content. This video will probably offend. It should offend because it's true, and it is the attitude that the rest of the world is now adopting about America. And if you are an American Christian, you need to see this video. You need to understand we will no longer support your inaction with our compassion. Now, I understand that there are many social perplexities in our world. Australia and many other countries are all dealing with seemingly unsolvable issues. And we may not be much further behind than America in dealing with these things. But this is what I can tell you. The governments will never, ever, ever be able to solve them. As Christians, God is not asking them to solve them, and He is not asking us to solve them. He is not asking us to find the solution. He is asking us to become the solution. There is a very well-known Cherokee story about the fact that there are two wolves that live in each of us. An evil wolf with evil traits, and a good wolf with equally good traits. Each wolf is battling to be the dominant character of that person. Now, which wolf wins? The story tells us it is the wolf you feed that wins. So which wolf are you feeding? I know that your president is throwing meat out to the masses that feeds the evil wolf. Rick Joyner is feeding the evil wolf. They tap into their own fears and the fears of the people, then that becomes the meat they offer others. And it is being consumed by the American people and American Christians at an alarming rate. The heart of America is growing cold because of fear, and they are choosing evil traits instead of feeding faith and compassion. They then look outside of themselves for the evil wolves out there that they can blame, when they have been feeding the evil wolf that is within them all along. I woke up on the 4th of August. That was Australian time. It was before the two shootings, right before the two shootings. It was before I'd heard about them or before they'd even happened, just before. And I had an experience. It wasn't a dream, although I came out of a sleep, but it was as though I came out into a vision. I'm not sure, but it was an experience. But I was standing in line in the Peace Park Memorial Museum in Hiroshima, looking at the exhibition. A Japanese man came up to me and started yelling at me. Now, even though I don't speak Japanese, I've got about 20 words of Japanese, I knew what he was saying, and he was angry. He was angry at me because I was an Anglo. He was blaming me for what the bomb had done to Japan. My response was to lovingly explain to him that this is what the museum was for, to remind us that we have two paths. We always have a choice. We can attack Pearl Harbor and kill many innocent people, and we can create a bomb and drop it on a city full of innocent people. Neither action can be justified, though many will try. But the creation of that bomb introduced humanity to its capacity to totally destroy itself. That's what the museum reminds us of. Not of war, not of two countries fighting against each other, not of enemies, but of the capacity of human spirit to wipe each other off the face of the earth. Because I've been to that museum in Hiroshima. The picture I chose for this video, I took it. This is not a picture of our past. This is a picture of our future. What the world is headed for, because people are so scared, they are so afraid of their own fears, that they have decided to feed the evil wolf. They think feeding the evil wolf will protect them. But feeding the evil wolf is what causes it. When humanity loses its compassion, it becomes cold-hearted and lawless. This is exactly what Jesus told us would happen in the days leading up to the tribulation. Feeding the evil wolf causes the tribulation. As Christians, which wolf are you feeding? Which wolf will you feed? Will fear of what is happening in your world cause you to fear that evil wolf? Or will you feed the good wolf? Will faith and trust in God sustain you? The reality for the Christian is that nothing can separate us from God. Nothing can. Many Christians see God and speak of God as though he's impotent and unable to act. Many speak of him as though he's losing the war. Let's be very, very clear about something. It is Jesus that opens the scrolls and releases these evils into our world. Now, why would he do that? Because it separates the sheep from the goats. It separates those who are playing at it and those who are living at it. It separates those who are feeding the evil wolf and those who are feeding the good wolf. Daniel said of these times, when these times come, he said this, "But the people who know their God shall be strong and carry out great exploit. And those of the people who understand shall instruct many." I'm going to end with these verses from Jeremiah, because Jeremiah had this same conversation with God. He had become overwhelmed by the prospering of evil people in his day, and that God was doing nothing to stop it. And he questioned God's decision-making. Jeremiah said, "Yet let me talk with you about your judgments. Why does the way of the wicked prosper? Why are those happy who deal treacherously?" In other words, why are you letting sinners get away with such evil, and why do they continue to prosper? And this was God's answer to him. "If you have run with the footmen and they have wearied you, then how can you contend with horses? And if in the land of peace in which you trusted they wearied you, then how will you do in the floodplain of the Jordan?" Let me finish with these last thoughts, because this is the conversation God was saying. If you are afraid now, what are you going to do when things get really bad?